Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the book launch event of the Futureproof City, 10 Immediate Paths to the Urban Resilience. And I'm Addison, I'm your NCO for today, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all. Thank you for taking the time to attend this event, and I hope you are as excited as I am to learn more about the urban resilience. So before the activities actually begins, let me introduce the VIP guests that we invited here today. So our guests are Ms. Zhou Xingsheng, Director of the Shekou Sub-District Public Service Office, Ms. Tong Xin, the Standing Council members of All China Lawyer Association, Li Yu, London and Partners, the Vice President, Ms. Leslie Li, Vice President of is Ms. Bennett Xie, South China Assistant of China British Business Council. Yes, and Ms. Wang Xiangyu, Secretary General of Shenzhen Green Building Association. Ms. Wang Zhiling, Deputy Chief Planner, UPDIS. Ms. Zhou Zhenjiang, Executive President of Hainan Chamber of Commerce, Shenzhen. So thank you all for coming to this event. So let me introduce something about the urban resilience. The urban resilience is more important now than ever before. Cities around the world face unprecedented challenges from climate change to the pandemics. And we need to find the innovative solutions to ensure that they can withstand these challenges. With the completion of this new library, Qianhai International Talent Hub, Shenzhen, invite Ms. Barry Wilson, the president of Hong Kong Urban Design, his recently released book, Futureproof City, which is very appropriate to the new development environment of Shanghai. Ms. Wilson is the founder of the business already registered in Shanghai, who is also the former Shenzhen chairman of the British Chamber of Commerce in Guangdong, and one of the first newly accredited GBA urban designers under the Greater Bay Area Urban Design Alliance. He takes these opportunities to discuss GBA urban design and the planning issues outlined in his book throughout this salon. The event aims to bring experienced industry practitioners together to discuss the important issues of how to create more resilient and footproof developments in the GBA. The salon will be interesting to the policymakers and the professionals working in the sustainability, development, technology, investment, healthy and welfare, and risk issues in cities today. So today we will have a fantastic program lined up for you. So let me give you a quick rundown of what to expect throughout this event. Our first section is a welcoming speech, and then there will be a book introduction presentation by Ms. Barry Wilson, followed by a panel discussions. And finally, we will have a book signing and a networking cocktail sections for our guests. So our hosting place is Qianhai International Talent Hub, which is carrying the missions of introducing overseas professionals to the opportunities of employment, global business, investment, and life in GBA. This landmark building is a meeting and a resource hub for introducing the Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau. And we would like to express our gratitude to our joint organizations of Qianhai International Talent Hub, Hong Kong Institute of Urban Design, Barry Wilson Project Initiative, and our supporting organizations of Royal Institute of British Architects Hong Kong Chapter, American Institute of Architects Hong Kong Chapter, Urban Land Institute China Mainland, and the Roundland Press for supporting this event. We couldn't have done it all without this full support, And we would like to thank all the organizations that have made this event possible. And now let's get to the first section. Welcome the Qianhai International General Manager, Ms. Liang Jianyue, to give our welcoming speech.
尊敬的百瑞先生尊敬的周新森主任以及各位参加我们这个 Futureproof City 新书发布会的来宾、女士们、先生们。
Ms. Guo, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's try this one, see if it works better. Yes, it does.
Yeah. Dear Ms. Wilson, distinguished guests, Ms. Guo, Ms. Zhou, ladies and gentlemen.
大家下午好，非常高兴能够与大家在前海国际人才港相聚。在此，我谨代表前海国际人才港对出席活动的各位来宾表示热烈欢迎，对所有关注前海国际人才港、支持前海发展的朋友致以衷心感谢。
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm delighted to gather with you all at Qianhai International Talent Hub. On the behalf of the Hub, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our guests attending this event and express our heartfelt gratitude to all the friends who have been paying attention to and support the development of the Qianhai International Talent Hub.
今天人才港非常荣幸能够请到百瑞先生，香港城市设计学会会长，带来《永恒之城：通向弹性城市的10大法则》新书发布、研讨与交流。
Today, we are honored to have Ms. Wilson, the president of the Hong Kong Institute of Urban Design, to introduce his new book, Futureproof City, to discuss and exchange ideas.
前海坚持依托香港服务内地面向世界，成为粤港澳大湾区深圳先行示范区建设新引擎。前海全面准确贯彻一国两制方针，率先落实内地与香港、澳门关于建立更紧密经贸关系的安排框架内对港开放措施。全国首家港资控股的消费金融公司、公募基金公司、合资证券公司以及港交所前海联合交易中心陆续开业。
Qianhai insists on the principle of relying on Hong Kong, serving the mainland and facing the world, becoming a new engine for the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area and the Shenzhen demonstration zone. Qianhai comprehensively implements the one country, two system policy, taking the lead in economic partnership arrangement framework for mainland China, Hong Kong and Macau. The National First Hong Kong Control Consumer Finance Company, Public Fund Company, Joint Venture Securities Company, and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange Qianhai Joint Trading Center have opened successfully.
前海已经成为与香港关联度最高、合作最紧密区域之一，在支持香港融入国家发展大局中发挥了桥头堡的作用。
Qianhai has become one of the regions with the highest degree of connection and close cooperation with Hong Kong, playing a bridgehead role in supporting Hong Kong's integrations into the national development strategy.
前海也为人才发展提供了支持保障，一是实施强有力引才政策，人才可享受特聘岗位支持、产业发展创新人才奖、境外高端紧缺人才15%个税补贴政策。经营团队每年最高可享受2000万元奖励，核心团队成员每年最高可享受200万元奖励。
Qianhai also provides support for talent development. Firstly, it implements strong talent attractions policy. Talent can enjoy career support, industry innovation talent award, and a 15% personal income tax subsidy for high-end talents from overseas. Management team can receive up to 20 million yuan in reward each year, while core team members can receive up to 2 million yuan in reward each year.
二是打造全要素人才生态。前海国际人才港线下提供451项政务、商务、生活服务，与艾斯维尔、波士顿咨询等组成前海国际人才合伙人， 通过100多场活动，推动人才、产业、市场深度融合，帮助400多家企业与上下游达成意向合作。
Secondly, it creates a comprehensive talent ecosystem. The Qianhai International Talent Hub provides 451 offline government business and life service, and established the Qianhai International Talent Partnership with famous institutes like Ellisburg, Boston Counseling. Throughout more than 100 activities, they promote deep integrations of talent and industry, helping over 400 enterprises to establish cooperation with different partners.
3是高水平推动前海国际人才港建设。目前，全球第1科研学术出版集团艾斯威尔，全球第3战略咨询公司波士顿咨询，全球5大猎头之一罗盛咨询，北京大学与剑桥大学合办的深圳前海中医研究院等均入驻前海国际人才港。
Thirdly, it promotes the constructions of Qianhai International Talent Hub at a high level, with the world top academic publishing group Elsevier and the third large global strategy consulting firm Boston Counseling, one of the top 5 global headhunter Rosen Counseling, and the Shenzhen Shanghai British Research Institutions, jointly operated by Peking University and the University of Cambridge, all setting in the Qianhai International Talent Hub.
前海国际人才港蓄势待发，未来将引入更多的高端人才机构，承载更多的国际化人才。
Qianhai International Talent Hub is ready for growth. In the future, it will introduce more high-end talent institutions and accommodate a greater number of international talents.
人才港因人才蓬荜生辉，人才也因人才港名声远扬。让我们再次以热烈的掌声欢迎百瑞先生，同时预祝永恒之城通向弹性城市的10大法则新书发布成功。
The Talent Hub shines because of its talent, and the talent thrive because of the Talent Hub reputation. So let's once again warmly welcome Ms. Wilson with a round of applause and wish the book launch with every success.
That's all the Chinese you're going to get from me today. So thank you. What a pleasure. Look, I'm beaming from ear to ear. What a pleasure to actually see you all here today. Touch you, feel you, not just through the screen, but old friends I haven't seen for a long time. Thank you all for coming from far, Dongguan and Hong Kong. Really delighted. This journey, let me start with a slide. Let me start and see what we've got. Down is always good. This journey started a long time ago. So this is the 5th time I've tried to have this launch. We tried in Beijing, we tried in Shanghai, they both got locked down. We tried in Guangzhou, lockdown. We tried in Shenzhen, no. So finally, I've invited these guests before, so thank you again for supporting me a year later, I think now, and coming and supporting this event. I thought we'd never get there. What I want to talk about on this book issue, I can't talk about a whole book, but I'm going to talk about a few issues, and I'm going to relate them to particularly the Greater Bay Area, which includes, of course, our friends in Hong Kong and our other partner cities. So I'm going to focus on that. But I'm going to go back first to, somebody asked me when they came in, how long did it take you to write this? And I'm going to say I started writing it in 2013. So, you know, it's 10 years, really. To actually write the book was very quick, maybe only a couple of months. But to collect the knowledge and information and thinking about it started a long time ago. And I was writing these articles for Urbanization magazine, along with others in the room at the time, trying to formulate some ideas about urbanization in China. And then I was also publishing those back in Hong Kong, in South China Morning Post, where I was writing a regular column on urban design there. And trying to develop some of the issues, perhaps around housing difficulties and misplaced development. So all of these things, I think, contributed to the book, 2015. And then I wrote them as a formal academic paper in 2018, which I'm so pleased to say, I've got my very nice mugshot behind me with a gold medal, was awarded in London by the Institution of Civil Engineers for the Reed and Malik Gold Medal, and they invited me to go and give a presentation on some of those ideas in London at the time. So this was when I started to formulate the idea of what a future-proof city is. And I put some words there in Chinese. You can't read them, Eli, but they talk about flexibility, thinking for the future, being adaptable. Resilience is a word we're familiar with. It shows that we can't be rigid and we have to move with the times. And perhaps we haven't always been very good at that in some areas of construction. So I produced these 10 ideas, which are here. And they're based around really simple things that when we talk about planning, I don't think you need to know about planning to understand these things. So they're about your health and culture and water and everyday needs that everybody thinks about. These are about human issues, and that's what planning really is about. So I've taken those 10 ideas and kind of woven them into a narrative in this book, because we tend to work with these in silos. We have water experts, or we have aging experts, or we have health experts, or we have food experts, and they don't cross over very well between their areas of expertise. So being not an expert in anything, I thought I would write a little bit of knowledge about all of these areas and try and put them together. And then, of course, I needed help. So I asked my daughter to kind of visualize some of these ideas for me. So I gave her a quick idea of what each chapter and idea was about and asked her to create a series of 10 drawings that represented that. So here are her 10 drawings. We're a bit squashed, but so she's published her first book there at age 14. So congratulations to her as well. And yes, exactly. And I'm so pleased to include her in this journey, and also she gets all the royalties if you decide to buy a book, not me. So the book is out 2021. As I say, it came out right at the end of 2021. It took a while to get approved to bring it into China, to set up our various launches, and then they all got cancelled, but we're here. So there are 3 things, not 10 things, 3 things I want to share with you today about how we can take all those 10 ideas and move them forward together as a way of change, better change for future-proofing in this turbulent world that we live in. None of us know where we're going. None of us expected the pandemic or these wars. I think we can anticipate food shortages. We can anticipate water shortages. We can see climate emergency is going to change our lives. How are we going to deal with that? Oh, that's definitely the wrong way. So let's look at that first one. Change the mindset, change the thinking. And I'm going to divide this into 4 little pieces now about why we need to change our thinking. There we are. We're unprepared for change. We haven't been thinking about it at all. Even though we know we need to change, we're not responding. To a certain extent, a lot of us are still quite ignorant about the need for change. We're living our own lives and can't see bigger pictures. And where we are aware, we're not focusing properly on the issues that need to be focused upon. So these 4 points, let's march through them. So this slightly interesting graphic, because it's a bit squashy again, talks about 2 curves. One is based on Moore's law, which is about the development of technology. And technology is kind of doubling its capacity in breadth and depth at about 2-year intervals. So technology, you buy a phone, 2 years later, the next phone you buy is twice as good, twice as fast, twice as much data, twice as many apps. That's technology. That's not what human condition do. Humans change about double in 20 years. So there's a big disparity with our ability to think differently and change our society to double the capacity of what it might do. So how can we match the speed of change? And it's not just technology, it's all these other events going on around ourselves, our lives, when as humans, we don't like change. We resist change. We just like what we know. And it's really difficult to get humanity to change. This is a big problem. So it's game time. Saves me thinking. So there's two pictures here. They are New York City, 5th Avenue. And the first one is 1900 and the second one is 1913, for those who can't see at the back. 1900, 1913. I've got two arrows. This one's pointing at something. You'll have to guess what it is, and that's pointing at something. Any ideas what we're pointing at? I know it's a bit blurry. You can't talk, you know what's in the picture. I'm going to ask Alexandra. Alexandra, do you know what the difference is here? Can you tell? Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So this is 5th Avenue. These are all horse-drawn vehicles. There is one car here, just one, in 1900. By 1913, it's changed completely. 13 years, we've changed from one car to only one horse left. This is the speed of change 100 years ago. I'm going to read a couple of notes now because the data is too much for me otherwise. So in 1902, the streetcars, the streetcars are what we call trams. They were all running on electricity by 1902. So actually in the first 2 years, they changed out the horses, put in tram tracks, and put in electric streetcars. By 1907, the last horse-drawn coaches were replaced by motor buses, so that's just 7 years. And by 1917, you couldn't find a horse in the city at all. Now, the interesting thing about that is it's not just about horses, of course. It's thinking about the layers of the city that go behind that. So let's think about our shops, for instance. So the shops in 1900, they were building wagons and carriages and leather harnesses and straps and all the things that goes with riding horses. And these had all been replaced very quickly by commerce based on tires and ignitions and speedometers and batteries and lots of other car-related issues. So it's not just what we see on the street, it's the whole infrastructure that's changed rapidly. All the jobs have changed. So we've lost what jobs? We've lost all the repair shops, all the parking garages, the gas stations, the taxi companies. Skilled jobs have all gone and been, let's think what we lost. We lost groomers to rub those horses. We lost coachmen to drive them, feed merchants, saddlers, stable keepers. There were stables in the city. Ostlers to look after the horses, wheelwrights, farriers, blacksmiths to do shoes, whip makers, veterinarians, breeders, street cleaners, and the farmers who grew all the food. Now we talk about street cleaners because every day in 1908, New York had 120,000 horses. They produced 60,000 gallons of urine and 2.5 million pounds of manure every single day. So, all this pollution, and they said, let's have new technology. Let's bring in these cars to make a clean city, dustless, odorless. Let's have these nice cars that have got rubber tires and move quietly and swiftly. And this will make our cities so much cleaner and more healthy. So 100 years ago, we were having that debate about a transfer to technology, talking about it improving health. Here we are 100 years ago, and we're now looking at the same types of transfer, but of course, automobiles didn't give us the healthy cities. They've created their own problems that we're now trying to look at. And the cities also changed because all the surfaces changed. The asphalt replaced the dirt streets. Neighborhoods began banning stables. Imported fertilizers started coming in instead of using all the manure. And as horses vanished, so did a lot of people. So I think that's a fascinating moment in time that I often like to reflect on and think how quickly that happened. Are we acting as quickly today? We know all these changes are going on. And the answer is quite simply, no, we're not. And construction, or kind of the area I'm really interested in, planning and construction, is definitely not been modernizing. Not only that, not only is it really slow to get in new technology, it also is slow with management practices. The sector has the lowest productivity rates globally, in fact. Let me give you an idea. Since 1995, global average value per hour has only grown about 25%. So that's in 30 years. We've added 25% growth in 30 years. And that's about a quarter of the rate that manufacturing has done it, because we've seen how much faster other sectors are developing. So actually, it's quite interesting. The US, for instance, has experienced a 50% plunge in productivity in that time in construction. None of the sectors around the world have managed to improve their technology in construction. Yet construction is responsible for 13% of the world's GDP and employs about 7% of the world's population. It is a massive industry that is unresponsive to change. So MIC is something, fabricated construction. It's been around since after the Second World War. You know, it's not new technology. We're still struggling to implement it in Hong Kong. Very, very few. I've seen, well, if anybody knows some cases in China, please point them out to me, because I'm very not familiar with seeing any cases. Particular things like using mass timber products, as shown from the example here, which is heavily related to climate change and kind of carbon loading. So there's some interesting issues in that. And then some pictures for you. So two are in Hong Kong, and one is somewhere in South China between a couple of cities. I can't remember where it is because it looks like everywhere in between cities in South China. So this is downtown Hong Kong. It's a weekday afternoon, and this is one of the most populous areas, and everybody has to walk in the road because the pavements are about as wide as my arm. And the sidewalks are all taken with people parking, because parking is, well, it's not quite free, but it's less than the cost of feeding my cat. So it's not an expensive thing to park a car in this city with the world's most expensive real estate. How can it be so cheap to occupy this really expensive space? So it's dangerous, it's polluted, it's uncomfortable, it's not happy for pedestrians at all. The second one I took quite recently. It was only about a month or two ago. This is a Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock in Tsim Sha Tsui. Again, right downtown, and we've got the kind of opposite case, but still a problem. This is Nathan Road, the main road, and we've got 1, 2, 3 lanes on one side and 3 lanes on the other, 6 lanes of traffic in this really dense area, devoted to vehicles. And again, you can see not much sidewalk for pedestrians. And there are no vehicles because it's Saturday, and there are 100,000 people there shopping. So we're not allocating our spaces for the right uses in the right places in so many of our cities. And these are issues that are not new, they're going on and on and on. The third case is, you know, again, we've been building a lot of new development in China. We're building it out immediately with 1, 2, 3, 4 lanes on either side, 8-lane highway, and there is no traffic. There is no traffic because these areas have not yet been fully developed. So we're developing a lot of expensive infrastructure for an unknown future. Will that ever occupy 8 lanes of traffic? Could we have built 2 lanes to start with and done some other things with that space? Could we have had wider sidewalks? Could we have bicycle tracks? Could we have had more planting? Could we have done other things and expanded more flexibly later? So building to a master plan that anticipates something huge in the future is not resilient. It's expensive and wasteful. This idea of being unaware. So these are United Nations Sustainability Goals. And anybody would like to tell me they don't know what these are? Room. Alison, do you know what these are? The UN Sustainability Goals. Well, what they are, they came out in about 2015 from the United Nations to tell us all what the key factors are that we should be developing our cities towards, to look at climate change, to look at resiliency, to look at equity. So these are quite a big issue because they're actually going to dictate how we should be moving forward. But almost nobody knows about them. Half my students at Hong Kong U in the planning department don't know what the sustainability goals are. And that, astounds me. Eli's looking at me like it's crazy. But there's very little awareness in China of the sustainability goals that should be shaping our lives. When we're planning now, we should be using the requirements of these goals to give us clear direction. But I'm not seeing that happening very often. And I think this kind of lack of awareness is also hindering change in the right direction. Game time again. Who wants to play the game this time? Hands up. I'm going to ask Simon. These are 2 buildings you know, Simon. Yes, in London. Okay, we're going to play. Guess how many car parking spaces there are. This is the game. So we're going to start. Item number 1 is the Shard. It's the tallest building in London, if not Europe, actually, 72 floors. How many car parking spaces do you think it has? 500. Anyone think more? Put your hand up if you think more than 500. Who thinks less? Alison thinks more. More. Couple there. Toby thinks more. How many do you think? You think no spaces? Oh, I love it. Now we got there. Any more ideas? 200. Okay, so we got a lot of uncertainty. Okay, time to reveal on the board. It has 47. 47. So, in this dense downtown district where real estate is expensive, development is expensive, the cost of land is expensive, there are deemed more better uses for it than providing parking spaces underground, which is very expensive to do. And what you're doing when you build a car parking space is you encourage a journey. What happens is if you don't have any car parking spaces, people think, okay, we'll come a different way. We're in London, we'll use the underground, we'll use the bus, we'll cycle, we'll walk. This is normal for most people. As soon as you build the car parking space, everything changes. So we'll play the next game. I've given you a clue now. Gherkin. Gherkin. Any guesses on the gherkin? You think it's 0 again? This is a bit older. Okay. It's 18. Now I have to also tell you it's no longer 18. It was built for 18. It's now only 5 because they've replaced 13 of those with bicycle parking. So coming back to the mindset is different. The mindset is, I can't drive my car to work. I don't expect to. When I get there, I can't park it. What are the alternatives? Okay, I take a train, I take the tube, we use these other factors. So the mindset is different. And this is a problem, in fact, with setting minimum parking requirements in our developments. Because when you set these requirements, they generate these journeys. And Donald Shoup, who's a very famous economist in land in US, estimates the cost of parking in a built shopping mall, for instance, adds about all that space for development. And if it's above ground, it's still about 30% additional cost. Now, what happens to that cost? It gets passed on. It gets passed on in the cost of your tenant lease, in the cost, therefore, of the goods you sell, and the cost of the food you eat when you get there. All those costs get passed on to you. So your parking, if you drive your car there, is subsidized heavily by all the people who haven't driven there. In fact, it's quite an interesting concept. Okay. More games. Third game. My last game, I think. Last game. Name that city is this game. Name the city. I'll take shouting from the floor. Anyone know one of those cities? Shanghai is one of the cities. Do you know which one? Here. Correct. Lifu, correct. You recognize that, yeah. That is Shanghai, you're absolutely right. Any more? It's hard to tell, isn't it? So this is the game. It's hard to tell. I'll give you a clue. They're in kind of north, south, east, and west of China. So they're in very, very different places. So we've got Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Chengdu. Yes, yes. You've got a good eye for this. Trained eye. But for a lot of people, you have no idea. And I mean, I think, let's imagine we're on an aeroplane traveling through China in the middle of the night. And there's a bit of turbulence, the light goes out, the oxygen mask comes out, and they give you a parachute and they say, jump out the plane. So you jump out the plane and you land somewhere in China. Will you be able to guess which province you're in? Will you be able to look and go, okay, I recognize the architecture here, the kind of feel of the streets, the culture? Can you tell? Now, this is a problem, I say, when you go to the US. You can jump out of a plane and find it very difficult to identify small town US. Eli's going to think about that. We can talk about that later. Because we have a lot of generic development. It's built to the same design standards nationally, particularly with highways, for instance. Highways have national standards. And so a lot of our design doesn't think about the context, focusing on where it really needs to be and responding to that area. So here's another idea. This isn't a game though, it's just an idea. Did anybody work on this building that's in here now? Because I know this was designed by Shenzhen company. So it's a Shenzhen building. I better read my notes so I can actually tell you quite correctly which one it is. Shenzhen Institute of Building Research looked at this building, which incorporates 40 sustainable technologies and strategies. Lots of solar and grey water and things. But the interesting thing about when they designed it was they looked at taking the same building and then how would you design it in different places. So if you took that same building, put it in Beijing, what it would look like? It looked like that. And we move it to a different city, what does it look like? The end city too are both in Shenzhen. One is if you're putting it in the urban area, one is if you're putting it in the rural area. So, there's a lot of different contexts. You understand what I'm saying here, Ms. Wang, right? Because it's your expertise. So, a building, even exactly the same brief, same technologies, same everything, should look completely different depending where you're building it. I'm just gonna go back to that slide. Do our buildings look completely different depending on where we're building them? Something to think about. Okay, that's changing the mindset. Think a little bit about that. So, saying then, maybe we need to make some changes. how do we change the process? Because, as I said, we don't like change. We're human. I like to sit in that chair. I like to get up in the morning and have my coffee. If I don't get my coffee, I'm grumpy. I want my routine. I want things the way they are. How are we going to get people to change? So here are my ideas. We have to, and this is really important, this first one, change people's values. What do they care about? From that, we have to reconsider, therefore, our decision making. Is it based on the right values? The approaches will change, therefore, and where we're spending our time and money will follow. So I'm going to read some notes again because I've got a lot of things to say on this one, so maybe I'm not. Oh, there it is. So I think China's 14th five-year plan was very interesting because it was the first one that didn't really put concrete targets of growth in GDP. All the others had said, GDP, this is what we must achieve. These were our measurements of success. And I think this is perhaps where some of the biggest problems have come in post-war development, is using GDP, gross domestic product, as the measurement of success. We hear it every day in the press. So what is GDP? You know, it was something that was developed actually during the Second World War. It came out of the US in 1942, and it was seen as a measurement to maximize war production. So that's not necessarily weapons, but that's all the manufacturing to gear up for war, to make sure that the economy was at its most efficient during that war period. Subsequently, of course, there was a Cold War period, and then the US used GDP quite strongly as a flag to show how successful capitalist ideas were in making everybody wealthy. So it was convenient to still use GDP. And then the United Nations adopted it in 1953 as the standard national accounting system. Why? Because it was simple. And two, because it measured production. It only measures production. So then President Robert Kennedy in 1968, he had his famous speech in Kansas. I'm not going to read it to you. I have read it before. It's a very nice speech, beautifully presented. I'll paraphrase. What it says is actually that, you know, GDP is just not a suitable way for us to measure our lives and success. Why? It measures guns and bombs and knives and jails and all the things that we don't really want to have in our lives, and it equates them with success. It doesn't measure family, neighborhood, community, society, the economy, happiness of doing something with your family, the quality of your health, all the things that we really care about. So it counts a lot of negatives and discounts a lot of positives. It is not an appropriate measure to judge our development. So what is? And there's a few on the board around here that have been trialed for different organizations over the years to try and find better balances that measure humanity rather than just production. And I'm really interested in what's happened in China in the last couple of years, this idea of GEP, which is growth ecosystem product, which is being developed. And it is being rolled out as a trial in Guangxi. And this is, let's flip to the next slide there. This gives an idea of the kind of things that are being assessed in that. So this is 2020. The GEP, this is now a new measurement, was 36 billion yuan. So when we now develop, not only can we say this project should create so much GDP, what is the cost in terms of lost resources, our lost water conservation, our lost tourism, our lost soil, our lost habitat, our carbon sequestration, fisheries, forestry, all these things are measured as a value, and we see them reduced. So we can do a better equation between the positives and the negatives. This is another example. There are no rights or wrongs, but there are definitely new mechanisms that we have to think to measure. If you go to live in Bhutan, which is a very, very small country in the Himalayas, not far from Tibet, they don't have GDP. They have gross national happiness. And to me, that makes good sense. I talked earlier about doing projects that, to me, don't seem to make sense in terms of sometimes the process. So this is a project in, I'll call it a Hong Kong project. It's a joint project, Hong Kong and Macau Bridge, for those that didn't recognize it. I worked on this project for 8 years, I confess. Not that bit, but other bits. Now, but this project started way, way back. 2004, the idea was coming to how can we build a bridge into Guangdong province and tap the labor, and we need to connect Hong Kong, all these ideas coming out there. But Hong Kong moves very slowly, and by the time they thought about doing it and planned it, the economy had started to move. They didn't want Shenzhen in on it because Shenzhen was seen as a competitor, so they built the bridge without linking Shenzhen, which means Shenzhen has built its own bridge to compete. And it took until 2018 to complete the bridge. So it took about 14 or so years of thinking, planning, execution to get the bridge built. When it opened, how many vehicles were on it? Miss Wu, your favorite number? Yeah. Okay, I think it might have been 5. I mean, it's so not busy that if you've got on your car to cross it, the next car in front is so far away you can't see it. So, they got the calculations, the planning calculations, massively wrong. Now, at what point did somebody manage to say, hold on, the environment has changed, the economics has changed, the competition has changed. We need to change direction with this project. 18 years we had to change direction. I remember being a consultant saying, we need to put railway on here in case we don't need the vehicles, because railway connects the high speeds railway system in China. We got another airport. There's all sorts of things railway. There is no railway. There's no capacity to retrofit this bridge with railway. So it's a complete white elephant. It's Hong Kong's most expensive ever infrastructure project. I hate to think of the figures. If I quote them, they'll be wrong now. It's a waste of time. And when we open the bridge into Zhongshan next year, I'm expecting that to be at high capacity because it's come in later, it's tapped into the changing environment, and I'm convinced it will be a success. So how do we make a project with that much commitment flexible, adaptable? How can we change our mind if it's not working? These are the kind of questions I'll ask. There's a project coming. The next big worry for me is in Hong Kong. A big new city being planned, these artificial islands, lots of reclamation. Here's the pretty drawings. These pretty drawings are based on planning now. The planning now is kind of already based on planning that was from the 20th century. So by the time, these are going to take 20 years to get buildings on them, are they built for 2040 or are they built for 1980? Or are they even built for now, 2020? By the time they're built, the whole concept could be out of date. How do we make this flexible, adaptable, resilient to change? It's a difficult question. So we've got our flood. We know that these changes are coming. We know change is coming. We know that we're going to have flooding. We know we're going to have drought. We know we're going to have water and food shortages. What are we doing to gear up for this? Are we addressing this with enough attention? We're right in a hotspot in Greater Bay Area. 54% of the population is going to be flooded at some point. I mean, It's unavoidable. I remember driving to Guangzhou last year across the bridge, and I could see the water level there all up to the top of the levees. Some of the levees were already overspilling. We're getting these flooding events. We're not going to see them as extreme. They're going to be every year soon. So how can we have more flexibility and adaptability? We need to be working on our green infrastructure. We need to be putting greening and natural systems at the heart of our design processes, not road systems, green systems, natural systems, water systems. That's why the earth works. We can't be fighting against the natural systems. We need to look at our health as the key component, because even with electric vehicles, I'm a great fan of electric vehicles. What Shenzhen's done, converting its fleet of buses and taxis, is great, and we're all going to be EV, it's great, but it's only going to solve 50% of the pollution problem, because most of the pollution is, 49%, let's say, most is coming from these other sources: tire wear, brake dust, and road particles. They're getting into our lungs, into our brains, into the oceans, into everywhere. It's now getting proven that beyond things like asthma, it looks like pollution is responsible for things like Alzheimer's. Certainly there are cancer issues. So EVs are not going to solve the problem. Actually, vehicles in urban centers are a problem in themselves. So my last couple of slides now. Change the vision. So no more GDP. We need to be thinking about these ideas. The context, where we're living, what makes Shenzhen special and different from Guangzhou, and different from Beijing and Chengdu and Shanghai. We need to put people first, not money first. We need to think about our aging population, about inclusive society and diverse society. We need to be focusing on civic infrastructure, shared infrastructure, not individual infrastructure, because it's inefficient. And we can't focus on that in our dense populations. There's no room for the individual. Technology is going to help, and we really need to make sure that technology can focus us in the right directions. So here's the culture. We talked a little bit about context earlier with our 4 cities. This is not new. Here we are throughout history in China. Roof pitch has been changing based on the climate at the time. So when there's more snowfall in colder periods, the roofs get steeper. Then they get flatter in different periods. So, this is a study between year 750 and 1750 and shows different warming patterns responding to the architecture. We should be able to jump out of that aeroplane and know exactly where we are. We should feel the spirit of the place. Technology, wow, we're doing great things here. AI, we're now seeing, is going to take over our lives. My wife jumped up and screamed at her computer today when she said, "Oh, there's an AI on there. It's already planning my life for today and planning everything, and I don't know how I'm going to cope with it." And none of us really understand AI yet and what it's going to mean in our lives. Assume it's going to make great changes. I think it's really interesting, the Shenzhen brain, looking at the efficiencies of networking our transport systems. Those are going to get more complex. Our whole systems are going to become alive through sensoring, Internet of Things, all talking to each other. I think we just sit back and drink a glass of champagne while we watch the success roll out. Let's hope so. Let's hope it's as simple as that. And I'm coming back to the people again. So in Europe, we're seeing, not just Europe, but cities all around the world, this change in realizing that urban places, urban spaces are for people, not cars. We've got this kind of urban terrorism, people changing their streets, going out during COVID, blocking off roads, eating and drinking out in the streets, planting trees. A lot of them were temporary, but now governments have taken it upon themselves to try and make some of those things permanent. We're making sure vehicles can't drive through neighborhoods. So there are a whole load of policies coming out globally that are going to change. I'm not sure, coming back to awareness, how aware in China, in Greater Bay Area, we are of some of these changes going on. So the policymakers in the room, I want you to be aware of global change as people want better places to live and work and breathe clean air and feel safe on the streets. Summary: change the mindset, change the process, change the vision. A future-proof city. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Barry. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for the fascinating presentation. So now we will move on to the panel discussions, and this is an excellent opportunity for us to hear about the opinions from the expertise in the field of the urban resilience and to gain a deeper understanding of this topic. So our panelists now today are Liu Lei, 深规划城市设计与公共艺术促进中心主任 the Director of the Shenzhen Agency for the Design and Art. 李福，艺家设计创始合伙人 the founding partner of the E+ UV Chat Architect. Thank you. Please welcome.
There's a red mark there. Next to... Heavy lifting team. There we go. Super. We introduced two people, didn't we? We're going to introduce. We give it a moment. We'll see. So Liu Lei, Li Fu, please take a seat. You're in the right places now.
Yeah, just to just like Eli, conflict, yes, here. 城市土地学会香港分会理事 ，Board Member of the Urban Land Institute Hong Kong. And the last one, 吴文元，资深规划师，深圳雅克德设计公司总经理 ，Co-author of the A Study of China Urban-Rural Integrations Development. So I'm gonna hand it over to Barry, and they will tell us to talk about how this plan is going.
Oh, I'm going to have this, and then I can walk around because I get itchy. So I've decided that I'd like to moderate this session rather than sit and talk about it because I think you've heard enough from me. And we have four experts, bigger experts than me, who I hope discuss some of the issues that I've introduced during this session. I've got the microphone. You've got one now. What I'd like them to do is take some of those issues, let's run with them in an organic, flexible, resilient way and see where they lead to. So the process will be a kind of discussion. If you've got questions, if you really want to ask one, throw up your hand, shout out, I don't mind, let's make it quite interactive process, quite fluid, and we'll see where it takes us. So maybe I'm going to dangle a little fish and say just simply, am I right?
Yeah, I think to an extent.
Okay, good. I'll leave it to you to explain. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I thank you for inviting first, and I do enjoy your presentation about future and the vision. Yeah, I definitely think this is a very good occasion and the location to talk about future because Shanghai is really about future and about change. So we are trying really hard to develop something different for the future of the city and for the future of the Bay Area. This area has been developed for about 10 years. I think we had a big gathering I think during COVID, the UADE, the piano of Shenzhen and Hong Kong of architecture and urban design. And there are some big discussions about whether Shanghai is a good case for the future or is it not? Yeah, I think it's a mixed answer from the panelists at the time because, of course, we see a brand new city and a brand new CBD, which is modern and shiny here. But we really would like to see some pattern of changing.
Do we know Qianhai is Qianhai? What's its character?
Yeah, so why is this different from all those CBDs that we have built in the past century? Why is it different? I think that's the big question we have right now. As you show the picture about in the beginning of 20th century, when the horse carriages been replaced by motor cars. We have been standing on that pattern of development for all the century. But this is a new time, a very new era. All the problems have been accumulating to a certain level that it has forcing us to think differently. Yeah, we can stay here comfortably, living the business as usual, but we just cannot. So when we talk about Shanghai, I think we have to rethink about the whole thing. Like, should we really rely on the cars? Should we really rely on the concrete and all those high consumption of energy? And should we really commute from all this part of the city to the same high dense office area, which will consume a lot of our time and energy and area for the road. So we're gonna think this systematically. Unfortunately, we still have a long way to go. For now, we have pretty nice buildings around, but we look at it from the nature, it's still a very typical CBD of 20th century. It doesn't belong to the 21st century yet. I think it will somehow come with the different changes as long as we realize the urgency of the era. But I think that's something very valuable in your presentation to grasp from the transportation, from infrastructure, from the human life, happiness, even the attitude towards GDP as a single index for development. I think the latest government, the new premier, Li Qiang, has exactly echoed what Kennedy did in your presentation, that he said GDP is something that normal people or normal citizens wouldn't worry too much about. What they worry about is the quality of their life. Do they have enough of education and healthcare, even the ecological environment? So I think this has been, in 1960 to now is like 80 years, sorry. So what Kennedy and what the Premier Li Qiang has just said were almost exactly echo each other. So that's a very interesting thing that I pick up from your presentation, and I think it's very timely for our thinking. Okay?
Great.
Okay. I think various events being postponed 5 times. 5 times.
5 times.
I'm
resilient.
But I think it's a good timing to discuss these issues, even better than 1 or 2 years ago, because as we know, what kind of situation situation we are facing now, we're experiencing now, after all COVID things, I think the first is the economy slowing down, everyone knows. So I think it's good timing for us to rethink what are you telling us. I think what you've been presenting is it's kind of a warning. You know, if we don't do things right, we're kind of facing very bad future. You know, that's it. I think so. I believe that. And secondly, I think what you're telling us, the rapid change of technology development, I think it's true because every day now, everyone's talking about AI. I think 18 months ago, you know, people don't believe it. AI would replace our job or work, but now I think everyone thinks so, you know, in one day. But now the thing is what as a human being, you know, what do we do? Yeah, what do we do? You know. And the third reason, I think everyone knows what's happening, especially in planning and the architecture design industries. I think in the past few months, this industry has been deconstructed. You know, many jobs lost. You know, I think that's the fact. But it's also a time we reconstruct our profession. You know, every firm, companies being set up. I mean, a lot of people after their no job, they find something new. You know, it's maybe we cannot follow the old path. We could do something new. I think so. That's why I think it's good timing to discuss the issues you just present. So congratulations and sharing your thoughtful ideas. Thank you.
我的英文不好，所以我申请用中文，这是比较正确。
Everybody's happy, don't worry.
那个李府可以帮忙，可以。只有他们俩比较可怜，你可以帮忙。我想呢，今天 Barry 给了一个非常好的一个演讲，他演讲的大标题，我相信大家都同意，就是这个认同度比副标题要高很多。原因是什么？就是愿景，越远大的愿景越容易达成共识。对人类所有的范围内，伟大的愿景都容易达成共识。而他的副标题恰恰是他书的内容。我觉得他这个书特别值得我读，因为我是预先读了他这本书，就是讲了我们如何抵达这个愿景的路径，以及我们如何评估我们这条路径是不是对的。这个里头就有很多困难和不同的选择，就是在选择路径的时候会有非常多的不同。就是我要达到，我都同意绿色发展，我都同意这个改变思想，就是他说的我们要改变思路。我们看一下，从中央的文件到政府的主要官员的发言，都谈到了思路改变，要创新，这些非常容易达成共识。怎么创新呢？那么路径里面就有很大的分歧，比如 Barry 说我们要扔掉原来的规范和撕掉原来的规划图，可能吗？就是我们其实在路径选择的时候，从方法论到我们的决心，到我们的智慧，都受到极大的考验。比如说我们在发展上，我们认为人口在增长的情况下，交通一定会增长的。我们现在对于发展的理解还是停留在要想富先修路的这个思路上。那么我们富了以后还是只修路吗？继续修路吗？所以我们每年，尤其是公平性的这个思考，就这对我们几乎是一个陌生的一个选项，或者说评估标准。什么样更公平？ 什么样的城市是更公平的。当然我认为就是特别有价值的是这本书最后讲到，就是如果我们不适应这个未来，我们可以探索不同的路径，但是我们要有理解我们走到这个目标的这样一个选择，就是我们几乎没有选择，我们都要走到那个目标上去。所以就像刚才刘磊说的，这个数字技术改变我们以前还在只是天天说狼来了，它来了以后呢？所以我们其实我不认为就是说我们把 Barry 这本书定义为讲的是未来，它其实是讲了一个我们如何走向未来，这个我觉得是特别有价值。Thank you, Barry. Hope you can understand what I told you. 我特别想强调一句，就是他说到那个小黄瓜，就是伦敦那个小黄瓜的停车位，我是去过现场的，真的是 zero 没有，现场只有5个停车位是只给残疾人的，地面只有5个停车位，地下可能是停车位，我还专门去看了，因为当时说一个2万平米的世界上最先进的办公楼应该有多少停车位，我们专门去看过，确实是没有停车位，确实是 zero。就是也许他们当时有设计，但是改变成设备用房了，所以他那儿是不允许停车的。地面的5个是给残疾人，这是我自己的这个认知。谢谢。
Of course, I need to add that all the answers to the questions are found in the book, right? I didn't give you the answers. You have to get the book to find the answers.
Buy the book. Buy the book. Buy the book.
Yeah.
Thank you for translating.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. You know, in English, there's a phrase that they say, "The devil is in the details," right? And I think you're absolutely right. There's so much here, isn't there? There's so much to discuss. But and the challenge to change, that I think is the basis of the book, really. That we all need to change. We need to change a lot faster than we've been changing in the way in which we think and in the way in which we make decisions. So how do you get people who are either motivated by avoiding risk in what they do, often in many places in government, and I'm not just going to talk about China, I'm going to talk about my experience working all around the world with governments and people in government around the world. You know, often they'll say, well, I don't want to do something new that hasn't been trusted, and if I'm the person who takes a risk and it goes wrong, then my job, you know, I'm going to be blamed, right? So they don't want to take a risk. So how do we create places that in the American way, they call them safe spaces. That's the phrase that we use now in America and England. We talk about safe spaces for decision makers. So you can say we're going to take a risk, and if it doesn't work, you know, it's okay. But also, you know, it's not just government. It's also all of us in the private sector, either a consultant or the owner of a project or an investor. And we're often motivated by the profit motive. You know, we have to make money. That's what we do. And so you don't get measured, unfortunately. We still measure things by whether you make a profit or not in terms of your bank balance. And we don't really measure happiness or ecosystem value or any of these other things that Barry was talking about that aren't related to GDP and sort of the classical ideas of economic productivity. And so again, how do we get people to change? And one of the challenges that I see, I'm here kind of as a representative in a way of the Urban Land Institute. And I talk with many colleagues professionally who are developers or investors or asset owners. And yeah, they say, you know, ESG and climate change and all of these other things, the environmental performance of our projects. Yeah, it's kind of important, but actually I'm here to make money. And my shareholders, ultimately, they tell me I have to make money. And there are very few of these whom I talk to where the shareholders say, I want you to make money, but I only want to make you to make money as long as you're performing environmentally. They usually just say, I just want money. So, you know, that change, the change in the way in which we think is really difficult. But there was something that was that you said, that you touched on, that we've all touched on a little bit, which is technology, which I think is really interesting, and the speed of change of technology versus the speed of change of people. And I want to throw something out there, which is a slightly different perspective, which is that technology is made by people, right? We design the technology, we control the technology, our governments regulate the technology, we can choose whether we buy the technology or deploy the technology or not. And we may even make a decision saying, we don't want that technology. That technology is amazing and it's scary, and I don't think it's a good idea, and we're not ready for it as a society, whatever that technology might be. So I think that we should remember that we are the ones who control the technology. We shouldn't let the technology control us. So if there is a change in society that comes as a result of technology, first of all, we can say, do we collectively want our society to become the society that is controlled by that technology or not? And second, we can say, you know, we want to evolve technologies in ways that help our society to do certain things. So I think we should remember to put ourselves, the people, at the center of technology, rather than saying, well, technology is doing this. Technology doesn't live on its own. You can turn it off, or you can turn it on and adjust the dial. And it's the same thing with AI. I think AI is really interesting because everybody's kind of excited and yet scared by what they're seeing with ChatGPT, which is not available in China, but other kinds of generative AI programs and systems. And what's really interesting about these AI systems is they don't replace the genius of the human mind. What they do is they trawl the web. They scan for things that have been done elsewhere, and they combine it, and they give you an answer based upon what's already been done. So it cannot come up with anything that's fundamentally new. There's no genius, right? It's just, it's like a big encyclopedia which can kind of spit out an answer based on what other people have written before. But it won't replace human imagination and creativity. At least it can't yet, right? So again, it's an amazing tool, potentially, but we need to be aware of how it works and what its limitations are so that we don't get scared by it. But we say, all right, you know, this is useful for X or Y. But, you know, in terms of, you're solving problems with design, you're solving problems with design of things, which require you to look at things in a new way, and AI isn't going to do that. So I think there's a really interesting conversation around how we use technology in our cities and how we use it to shape our cities to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. And the last thing I'd love to say there is that we mostly are like ostriches with our heads in the sand around what many people are calling the climate emergency. We're kind of saying, well, we should do a little bit better, but we don't have time to do it a little bit better. So that brings us back to the speed of change, because we have to do things really massively differently in the next 5 years. And everybody's going, oh, net zero by 2050, 2060, sometime. And they're sort of going, well, we need to change, but we can change in 10 years or 15 years time. And what the latest IPCC report that just came out last week tells us is that we need to really be making those changes now. So again, how do we get people to change, make drastic change now? I don't have the answer, but I think Barry's raising definitely the right questions.
Well, in a way, coming back to the horse and automobile, you know, our cities changed through a technology change at the time. And I'm wondering, with this moment of profound change, is technology going to reshape our cities? Is it the way that, you know, perhaps it's autonomous vehicles or more AI-based transport thinking that can then reshape the way we plan?
When it comes to all of these things that we're talking about in terms of transport, and transport is a big deal. Obviously, energy in buildings, if we just think about climate change, energy in buildings is huge. But you can do a lot more centrally with energy in buildings. You can do district energy, and of course, a lot of the energy that's consumed in buildings is electricity. So central governments of everywhere can make a really big change by, getting out of coal and getting, from coal to gas to renewable. So that's something that happens. Most cities can't really control that very much. That's much more often done at a central level. But transport is really interesting because cities are often in charge of that. They have a lot of power of agency to do with transport. And the thing that I would contrast in terms of the difference between New York in 1900 and 1915 versus today is that change from horse-drawn carriages to motor cars happened pretty much on its own. And when I say on its own, as a result of people taking up this new technology, just buying the new technology, right? So there wasn't a huge amount of government involvement keeping change from happening or regulating the change. There were some, things like speed limits and the like, but there wasn't a huge amount of government involved. Today, we have transport planners, transport engineers, highway authorities, big pieces of government that set out the rules that dictate how our cities work. And I think we're going to need, if we're going to have transport change, real transport change, then we're going to need to get the government people, and this is across the world, to change how they think. Now, in Hong Kong, where I live, our transport, Hong Kong has the best public transport mode share in the world. 80% or more of trips made in Hong Kong are made by public transport, and this is amazing. There are many things that Hong Kong doesn't do very well. This is one of the things that Hong Kong does super well, and we should be really, really proud of it in Hong Kong. And yet the transport department is saying, well, car ownership is rising, so we should build more parking spaces. Huh? How about car ownership is rising? We should make it more difficult to own a car. We shouldn't build more parking spaces so that people don't just, cars don't just happen. You have to go out and buy one, right? So why is car ownership rising? What can we do to prevent that from rising? How can we prevent people from wanting to get in their car? Better public transport again, right? So again, it comes down to policy decisions and people having a vision and saying, we want our city to be like that. Let's all push in that direction.
So less rules.
No, different vision.
Throw the rules away.
Vision guiding the rules. No, different rules.
Actually, I think this actually called the individual freedom and the collective responsibility. This is always somewhere between right and left, So a bigger government or smaller government. This is definitely a issue we have been debating from the day one of the modern transportation or modern governing. So I think the important thing is realize how slow we can change. I think the very important safety net is liability. Any changes come with the risk of failure, which will bring catastrophic result from some unsuccessful change. No matter how the vision is, is attractive. So I think that is from our human nature of staying away from new solutions and new adventures. So I think the liability is definitely something, again, deeply embedded in our human nature. And it's one of the biggest rules that govern the behavior society everywhere in the world. So it's hard to change one individual. It's even harder to change a group of people's behavior. So all those regulations that we hate or we don't like, we want to get rid of, actually they have been developed over years by, a lot of generations of thinking and practicing. So it's really hard to get rid of them overnight. I think that no matter how emergent it is, it's hard to get rid of them.
But that is the core of the problem, isn't it? Because regulation always follows innovation. And
But it also reflects the era in which it was made.
Here's my point. Okay, here's my point. So if you think about the mathematical rule of a single digit of interest, that will make a very big accumulation of change. I think that's a very important rule of the evolution. So the evolution doesn't come with 80% of change between generations. They come with like 1% between generations. And mathematically, that'll make a big difference from like say 10 generations on. But even after 30 generations, it'll actually become a totally different animal. I think from that point of view is that although we hate the regulations, we're gonna change it step by step, you know, with 5% or mostly change every time.
But they'll always be out of date, won't they? They'll always be obsolete.
Regulations reflect the era that they were made in, absolutely. So a lot of our transport planning reflects the 1960s. But you're right. I mean, one of the things that I like to think about is what single change, you take any one city, you think about the problems of that one city, that I know is the way that you think. What is the one change that we could make that would then have like a bigger set of effects, like a butterfly effect, right? You change this one thing, that leads to that change, and that change, and that change, and that change. And that would really, over time, make the city much better. And I'd imagine with most cities, there are a few little things that you can say, if you change that, it's going to have a big effect.
But there are tipping points, aren't there? And was COVID-19 one of those tipping points? Has that changed some mindset? Has that changed some policies? Do you think we're going to go back to business as usual now?
Well, I just want to pick up what Li Fu said at the beginning, looking Shanghai as an example. I believe Shanghai, when Shanghai was developed, we have a very grand vision for Shanghai, and we have collect the smartest brain around the world to come here, you know, and I believe in all the design briefs, we all have the principles we just presented. But why we receive the result now? You know, we have the smartest design profession. We have, you know, everyone, but we still come here by car, right? It's the what's the wrong? I mean, that's very strange thing, you know. You know whether, I mean, I believe all the designers and planners when they came here, you know, they all have great ideas. But why now we have a very, you know, disappointed result, you know.
So what I'm getting is in fact, there's no way we can plan for change. We can only react, and change only really comes through innovation, through society making that change, and then government will always kind of respond. It'll always be behind the curve, but we can't ever expect government to plan with vision to anticipate the future. So we have to just have adaptable government that's flexible and can iterate as we go.
应该怎么说？就是我接着李府刚才说的，就是前海的规划，我们寄予的希望是它能够是为未来建的一个城市。但实际上我们会发现，就是任何物理空间的规划，一旦规划形成，它就从解决问题或者描述理想变成了撤走。因为什么呢？因为它不变。而生活就是不断改变的，不管是经济还是我们的社会结构，还是人口，都在发生巨大的变化。当年我们没有想象前海会这么慢填不满的，对吧？ 我们会想象的跟深圳其他地区一样，瞬间填满。所以就是这些变化，实际上我们用了一个不变的东西去应对变化，它一定变成阻力，就是规划从一开始解决问题的人变成制造问题的，一定会这样。所以规划学和建筑学是不一样的，它是不断被质疑和批判是对的，是它的树立，这个是我要说的。所以我认为规划应该始终保持更消极的态度，在空间上保持更消极的态度，也就是说不要一张蓝图干到底，谁也没有，上帝都不可能一张蓝图干到底的。看看我们人类的智齿，人就是它的设计，但是智齿就是一个蓝图的修改，对吧？而且它这个修改就烂尾了，就是搁在那儿了，你慢慢退化吧。所以我们如何应对变化是一个课题。所以我再次回到 Barry 这本书的这个价值，就是我们如何应对这个，我们都认可会发生这样的变化。当然我特别想说的就是，因为我女儿是学科学的，她跟我有一个讨论，她说人类的文明这么几千年来看，人类的文明和文化没有进步，是技术进步。他认为是技术进步拖着人类的文化和启发在进步。所以他说大部分情况，李甫就是你说的 evolution 是不会发生的，大部分情况会演变成 revolution， 就是说就是在技术逼到你没有办法的时候，你就不得不有革命性的改变。就像我们原来你在座的年轻人都不能理解，当时我们家门口有个邮局或者有一个邮筒，是一个非常便利的一个标志，今天你们还需要它吗？你们可能只是想网红打卡一下，没有概念，就是有一个邮局或者有一个邮筒对你们完全 no need。 所以我觉得这个变化是可能我们正好处于这个时代，大量的变化，包括新经济的变化会带来的。我认为规划有很多概念一出来就过时了，比如说15分钟生活圈。现在我问了很多年轻人，你的生活哪一部分跟15分钟有关？可能只要1分钟，你要吃饭只要拿起手机来，至于它是从15分钟还是25分钟的地方运过来，你不管，你只要1分钟，你就可以完成你要吃饭这个目标，对吧？这15分钟生活圈对于我们有意义吗？在物理上去实现一个15分钟生活圈有意义吗？所以我们现在城市规划的理论退化也是非常的快，一出来就过时了，各位。所以我真的觉得 Barry 这本书其实不是告诉我们很多具体的方法论，但是它很引起我们的思考，就是说我们如何面对这些问题和我们现有的工具箱是不是要完全放下和抛弃掉。
Anyone like to pick that up?
The one thing that Barry's book has a little bit on complexity, and I think what we're all dancing around is cities as complex adaptive systems with emergence at their roots. And that's something that we could talk about, I think, quite a lot. Maybe that requires another book.
Well, it is. There's a whole chapter on complex systems.
I know.
So, I mean, essentially what I'm trying to say is humanity cannot plan and regulate for the future. So every time we're designing or planning anything, it's already obsolete as we draw the line. But with the new technology, which actually drives change anyway, with our AI systems, with our smarter thinking, can technology actually much more efficiently plan our cities and continually adapt them so they are iterated? So, you know, if you go to catch a train now, you will never have to look at what the train timetable is because there won't be one. It will be constantly changing to be the most efficient train timetable within the system of things going on around it, depending on what leaves are falling on the line that day and how many taxis there are ready to pick people up when they arrive, and a million other complex things that you certainly can't plan on a drawing board. So planning, city planning and management in particular, will become alive, aware even. You know, and this is the great worry, I think, you know, those Terminator movies when the AI becomes aware and then wants to destroy humanity. I mean, but in a way we know to manage the complexity of our cities, we need help, and only really the technology can help us there.
Okay, I want to respond to Ms. Wu's point of no evolution, but only revolution.
That's my point. I know you like that one.
Honestly, if you break down those revolutions, you can see it's actually evolution. Look, there were experiments in 1930s for people to imagine what it's going to be like in 2000. People have been painting their imagination for what happened in 2000. If you look at those comics, that'll be very funny, like, because none of them were actually happening. We don't have flying cars. Right? Because they were just illusions. What really happened is either technology or our lifestyle were gradually changing year to year, and whatever accumulated has become something that's totally unrecognizable. It's actually faster than what people think revolutionary ideas in 1930. You know what I mean?
So there's a kind of bottleneck that things change, but they don't get released, and then suddenly they get released in revolution.
It's actually happening without your notice. It's gradually changing until a certain moment or threshold that you realize it is like when the SpaceX successfully sent out the rocket. Actually, it has been failed many times before that. So I think again, so this is like for me the future is a half-half topic. Half of them is positive, and I still have confidence in that. But on the other hand, it's really painful fortitude to get there. I mean, each of the progress were accumulated by those errors. It's always come that way. Not only in technology, but also our governance, our society, our lifestyle even. I think that is why our planning cannot catch up with our lifestyle change here, especially in Asia, because people always purchase the cheapest product and trying to get more pleasure out of whatever habit they can get. They don't follow the planner's rules. And so I think that is a very big database for them to trial and error, to do this error and trial. So when planners or the sort of authorities realize that, it has already happened, but it doesn't happen overnight. It happens with a lot of little changes. So, but yeah, I know it's hard for the buildings and the spaces to change after, but I think it's still retrofitting. We still can retrofit in many places, like
car parking back to bicycles.
Paris still be the most beautiful city in the world. It has been planned many years ago, right? It doesn't prove to be bad city planning, you know, Paris, because it's always keep on retrofitting itself. So I'll have confidence in this evolution, whatever you think.
Paris has good bones, right? It's got the basics that allow it to succeed. It's got the density, it's got the transport network, right? It's got a number of the network of green spaces, etc. It's got all of the ingredients that it'll have allowed it to evolve over the years and remain successful. I guess the challenge perhaps is for cities that were developed at other times to reflect particular other circumstances, whether they've got the ability to adapt as successfully.
Exactly.
So cities have come and gone throughout history. Right? There's no Troy anymore. A lot of Chinese cities have lost. Maybe I can ask you each to make a kind of final summary of your ideas.
I can do that. I can do that. 不过我可以回应一下李福刚才说的，就是可以看出来我们两个是完全，就是在这个问题上是有很大差异。就是我相信就是 evolution 会发生在每一个阶段，或者是每一个角落，或者是就是改革者和改革的事件是不断在发生的，这个我认可。但是我所讲的这个改良或者改革是一种社会性的响应，就全社会的响应。而这个响应在什么时候会，就是一个更全面的响应会发生在什么时候呢？实际上是被倒逼出来，都不是主动的社会主动的 follow 这种 evolution， 就是去改良。我看到了未来，我普遍的社会响应。所以就这一点来说，我认为我们经常会看到这个所谓的 evolution， 就是改良或者改革，会进一步退三步的这样的事情会发生，因为它并未获得这样完整的响应。但是我相信，就是真正的改变会被什么东西推动呢？就是技术革新。我真的是认同这一点的，就是新的技术会倒逼人的进步。比如说自动驾驶到来的时候，可能我们真的就不需要停车库了。现在我们可以看到伦敦的实验室这么大量的办公楼，只有很少量的停车库。有一天技术进步会让我们就不需要停车库成为一种共识，而这个时候我认为是一种 revolution。
Okay, I've got some, I'm being urged to wrap up, right? I've just got, so to wrap up, I've got one question from the floor, because Xiaoshan was asking for a long time. Let's have your question, and let's see if we can do it as a final wrap up to finish the event.
I'm from Ultra-Landscape Architecture, and we are located in the Netherlands, so I travel here for business. So my question or during the conversation is that I traveled from Shanghai, Hangzhou, and to Guangzhou, Qianhai, and then now Shenzhen and later now. That my our collaborators and clients were guiding me through the city. If you can hear me all.
I can hear you.
Yes. So actually, I had a very strong impression. So I don't know if everyone ever went to that.
Yeah. Familiar, yeah.
So when I was there for the first time, that I feel that I really think that's a very comfortable feel for me. So when I was there, it was relaxing, very relaxed. And compared with the experience when I was in Guangzhou, the area, because I was also living there, that every day I just walk on the street with sometimes in my district. That's all. I have crossed a very wide street, across the night. So that feel actually with very high rise building makes me also feel attracted. So that's why I think what is the future for us? We cannot avoid the city, right? So we have to make CBDs for our economic growth. But in China, we also have very strong culture or very old historical areas, and that's really a contrast. But I feel maybe for the future, we should design for human, but not for the cars and for the technology.
I think this is the longest question I've heard. But I think what you're saying is you've summarized my lecture beautifully.
Yes. I have a question to this.
Yes.
Why you like Dapeng, but you living in the downtown? Why? Why I like Dapeng?
And then you're living in the downtown. 为什么你喜欢大鹏古城那个氛围，但是你生活在中心区呢？
So I went there, and in the workday, so there was nobody there because I know my collaborators and colleagues are working during the days and the weekdays. So there's nobody there. So that's also I agree with you that sometimes we have to live in a very public life based on the technology and all these future images. But sometimes maybe for search. That's why I like that. So I don't know if that's the case or something. Maybe this is also a question for you guys. That are we doing planning from top down or from the bottom up?
Well, yeah, I think that is the question. And the reasons you like Dapeng are human reasons, which is what I'm trying to express. How can we bring that humanity into our city? Now I'm going to leave that question, and then
maybe
this will be the wrap up as well. Yeah.
But I think Dapeng is interesting. You mentioned GDP in one of the slides. Shenzhen has 10+1 districts. Dapeng is one of them. But Dapeng is the only one not divided by GDP. You know that. So that's why you can feel the environment. But interestingly, as Wu just said, why I think he picked up some points very important why we live in the city. I think that's good, interesting question too for all of us to think about it.
A closing statement, William? Ela?
I think we should be a little bit more, I think we should really think about what we want and technology, interesting questions around technology, revolution, and evolution. I'm going to come down squarely on the side, as I have come already, of us being in charge of the technology, not the technology being in charge of us. Evolution or revolution happening, but as a result of forces that we marshal. I mean, we're the ones who control all of this. It just doesn't just happen on its own. So we should not forget our agency. And if we want to have certain kinds of places, then we design them, we put in the policies to enable them, we create the environment in which those places can emerge over time. Paris remains beautiful as Paris. It hasn't turned into 60-story apartment buildings because the policies prevent that. And La Défense outside Paris is where the tall buildings are, and that's a result of specific decisions made. We're going to use this technology, but we're going to use it over there, and we're not going to use it over here. So we've got to remember that we're the ones in charge. So if we want to see change, we should make it happen. If we don't want to see change, that's also in our gift. Thank you.
Excellent. And I started with you, and can I finish with you? A very short finish.
Okay. Yeah. So I think this lady has a very interesting metaphor of our city and our individual preference. So I want to give another metaphor, which is sort of ironic, but very interesting too. You know the technology company of Huawei, who represents the sort of information technology of China, they decided to build their building in Dongguan as ancient palaces. So you guys think it's funny? So I think I agree with Eli. It's our human nature and our individual decisions to decide what to choose. So I think it's really about choice instead of something you passively have to accept. You can choose the downtown of Guangzhou, or you can choose the Dapeng, but it's really good for you to have both on the table to choose rather than you have to accept something. Okay, so that'll.
Thank you. Alison, I'll just come and close. If you're happy sat here for the moment, please come and do your thing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, all.
So there was a fantasy discussion. So thanks our panelists for sharing their expertise with us. And we have a great panel here today, and I'm sure they will provide some really valuable insight to us. So now we will move on to the last part, and it's the book signing and the network cocktail sections, which is very relaxing and exciting. This is an excellent opportunity for you to get a copy of the Futureproof City, the book, and to meet the author himself, Barry. And there are 20% discount for you if you would like to purchase this book here, and only available from them in China. And on site, you can get the book personally signed by Barry, and which is also a good opportunity to get and interact with our brilliant author. And speaking of which, I represent the ITH to give a little present for our Barry. Yeah, to wish you good luck and our best wishes for your book to be the bestseller, please. This is a bunch of flowers. Yeah, hope you will like it.
Thank you so much, Alison. Let's have a photo together. Smells so good.
So thank you guys for attending today's event, and I hope you guys can find it informative and engaging. And please enjoy the book signing and the network cocktail sections. And don't forget to pay a visit to the new library, which is on the second floor. You can find a staircase, and you can go downside and pay a little bit visit with your cocktail drinking and relaxing themselves. So we should have a good evening. Thank you.